2, 1, and action. All right, here you go. The word rational, right? Does anybody know what that means? Logical. Yep, that's true. Right? When we're talking about reasoning, that's what that means. In math, it means something different. All right. So first part of that, ratio, right? Now, when you think of ratios, what's another thing you think of? Fractions, says Mason. Awesome. So everything we do in terms of rational equations, and these other ones later on, will be fractions. All right. So we're going to solve equations with fractions somewhere in the answer. Okay. Here we go. These easy ones are, in my opinion, easy. The second thing we're going to get to is not as simple. All right. So here we are. Let's do these one at a time. Here's the first one on the left. What I want you to do to begin with is imagine there is a 1 under this 8, right? Which there isn't, but there is, right? Any whole number can be divided by 1 and it's still the same thing, right? Any number, actually not any whole number, but so then what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply. You guys remember doing that way back in the day? Way back when you algebra 1. And we're going to do this. So like over here on the right, we can see, all right, we're going to cross multiply like that. Over here, we're going to cross multiply like that. See if you can cross multiply on both of those questions right now. Ready, set, go. Here we go. All right, so if you cross multiplied over here on the left, it'd be 1 times all that stuff. So what we're really doing is we're distributing, right? Now, 1 times anything is itself, right, is the other thing. So it's not so hard. And then k times 8. So that's just simply 8k. Okay, on the right side, 6 times 3, we're cross multiplying, 6 times 3. And then over here, we've got 1 times 2k minus 6. I didn't really pick the best ones here, but normally if this was a number other than 1, we'd have to do this, right? We'd have to distribute. So I hope I don't confuse you there. That's why I'm writing it out this way. All right, so this is 18 equals 2k minus 6. Now we have to solve the equations, right? We have to get everything that's a variable on one side, everything that's a number on the other side. So on the equation on the left, what am I to do? Who has a suggestion? Subtract 4k like that. Okay, awesome. There are lots of ways you could do this, but that's one of them. That's probably what I would have done. So 8k minus 4k. Bingo. There's one last step here. Let's finish up this side. Yeah, divide by 4 on both sides. We'll be left with, okay, there's 2 ways you could write this. First of all, if we write it this way, we notice we can reduce it, right? 5 over 2. And since it's an exact decimal, we could just write it like that, right? You're going to see some fractions on the other choice. I just want to prepare you for it, okay? So that's one side, and that's what k is equal to. Awesome. Easy enough. The other side, there's 2 steps to solve this one. Step 1. All right. We haven't done something like this in a while, right? So yep. And what's happening here is we're saying 24 is equal to 2 times some number, right? What's the number? 12. There we go. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. That's what happened. All right. Those are our answers. Easy enough, right? Every one of these intro ones is similar to this. Okay. Now, let's move on to the ones that aren't intro. Look at this beast of a question. Look at that sucker right there. Oh my goodness. All right, let's write down this one first. Pause to write it down. Let's do this math. Before we cross multiply, I want you to notice something that both sides have in common. What's something you see on both sides? X minus 2 where? Bottom. What do we call the bottom? Denominator, right? So in the denominator, I see that X minus 2 is on both sides. So here's what happens. Whatever I do to one side of an equation, I must do to the other. Watch what happens here. If I say I'm going to take the left-hand side and multiply it times X minus 2, and I'm going to take the right-hand side and I'm going to multiply by X minus 2, what essentially is happening? Let's use a crayon. This will be awesome. That's right, because anything divided by itself is what number? 1. Awesome. So, see ya. See you later. See ya. That crayon works very well for that, actually. You can still kind of see what was there. I like that. So what do we have left? Let's write down here what we have left. So we still have x squared plus 20 over x. Then over here we have 14 minus x. And if this helps you out, that's fine. Go ahead and put a 1 down there. Right? Anything divided by itself is 1. Now this looks a lot like what we had a moment ago, correct? Doesn't it? All right, so let's go ahead and cross multiply. Let's do that. Ready? See if you can beat me. I mean, I'm using a mouse on a computer. Come on. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna work sideways here. It's a 1, but I'm doing this for you, everybody. I'm like, duh. Okay. I also have to distribute this son of a gun, though. Oh, all right. Did you do that correctly? What do I have over here? Awesome. All right. Now, I want everything that is a variable on one side. So, here we are. When I do that, oh, crayon time. This turns into 2x squared plus 20 equals 14x. Okay, now I'm going to take you back to a time when we had to solve these equations, which we did a while ago. Okay. Whenever we have an x squared and an x in the same equation, we always set them equal to what number? Set the whole equation equal to 0. Awesome. Very good. It's a long time ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one more thing. We're going to subtract 14x from both sides. Now, there's nothing to combine with the 14x. So it's just going to be written this way. Whew. We're not quite done yet, though. We got some work to do. Now we have to solve. We have to figure out what could we plug in to make all of this thing on the left side equal 0. Here's the first thing we should do. Do you notice anything in common, people? Anything in common over here? All even, which means they can be divided by 2. So we're going to rewrite it like this. Okay. For the sake of these kind of questions, whenever there's a 2 out here, this doesn't really mean anything. And here's why. It doesn't mean anything anymore. If I take this side and divide by 2, and I take this side divided by 2, you don't have to write this part down. But it doesn't really change anything, right? I still have x squared minus 7x plus 10 equals what number? 0, because 0 divided by anything is 0. Now, here's what we have to really focus on now. This quadratic in here. What we have to try to do is factor this thing. So the 2 is out there. The 2 won't even help us with an answer. This could be a 20, 120, 7,120. I don't care what it is out there. That number does not matter. But what we do need to figure out is what are the factors. So taking you way back to first semester, we need to figure out 2 numbers that multiply to equal positive 10. Multiply equal 10 and add up to negative 7. 5 and 2. So 5 and 2. All right, let's check that. What kind of 5? And what kind of 2? It works. Okay. So these are our factors. But are our answers negative 5 and negative 2? Who remembers what we did then? We did one little twist at the end. Remember, our goal is to figure out what makes the equation equal 0. So what makes this first group of parentheses equal 0? Positive 5. X has to equal positive 5, doesn't it? Because then 5 minus 5 would be 0. And then what does X have to equal here? Positive 2. Woo! So we have 2 answers. Or do we? Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's go back up to the top, which was a long time ago, it seems, right? Wow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this. I'm going to copy this thing. I'm going to write it in all its glory, right? We had 2 answers that we think are correct. Here's the problem. What happens with this one if we try to check our answer? Let's go. Plug in 2. Plug in 2. Plug in 2 everywhere. And I want to draw your attention to, so I'm just going to plug it in everywhere, but I want to draw your attention to the bottom of these fractions. So when I'm plugging in 2, we're going to run into an issue. So let's say I'm checking this work, right, Warren? And I look down at the bottom of both fractions and I see this. What's that equal to? That's 0. So what do we do about that? Can 0 be on the bottom of a fraction, people? Can you take any number and divide by 0? No, this is an issue. 0 can't be down there. Does not work. So if you tried checking this on your calculator, you'd say, okay, 14 minus 2 is 12. 12 divided by 0, what is that? It would say error or something like that, right? So what that tells us is that 2 cannot possibly be an answer. And as a matter of fact, you could have seen that in the very beginning, right? Because that's what I'm looking at right now. I don't see any work. But what I can tell is that if I plug in 2, I get 0 on the bottom of a fraction, which is bad. If I plug in 2 over here, I get 0 on the bottom of a fraction. Another answer that would not work would be 0. If I plugged in 0 right there, it would say 0 times something. That's also a problem. So x couldn't be 0, and x cannot equal 2. So what is our answer? 5. Will 5 work out? Well, we can always check it. Let's check it right now, everybody. Here we go. Let's plug in 5 everywhere. So on the top here, I've got 5 squared. What's 5 squared? 25 plus 20. 45. On the bottom, I've got 5 times 5 minus 2. Okay, so the parentheses makes that 3. 3 times 5 is 15. That's the left-hand side. Plug in 5 over here. 14 minus 5. Okay, plug in 5 over here. 5 minus 2 is 3. Let's simplify both sides. What's 45 divided by 15? What's 9 divided by 3? Does 3 equal 3? Okay, we are correct. That's how we know. If I tried doing that with 2, I'd run into a problem, wouldn't I? Matter of fact, if doing my work x equals 0, 0 wouldn't work either, but we didn't get 0. Now, why does this happen? This bothers people that we do the work the right way, we end up with a wrong answer. Here's what happens. At some point, we did this. We multiplied by x up here, didn't we? And we generated an x squared that wasn't there before. So this x squared wasn't present in the original equation. So what happens is when we take an x times an x, we end up with x squared. And we know with x squared, you can have up to 2 answers. But was this originally an x squared to begin with? No. Same thing happens over here, right? Matter of fact, when we move it over and we move this over here, the 2 things that caused the problem in the beginning disappeared, didn't they? X minus 2 and x minus 2. So when we solve that, we change the game. When the very first step we did was the problem. X minus 2 on both sides. Okay, we got rid of it right away. Here we go. Let's try one more, and then we'll be done. This is a beast. Here we are. What's something that'll go bye-bye? X minus 1. Now, let's learn the lesson that we learned just a few seconds ago. Let's take a look at the bottom. Let's identify them right frickin' now. What are numbers that could not possibly be answers? So x cannot be 1. X can also not be -3 right there, right? Okay, anything that would make the bottom of a fraction 0 won't work. Now, what we saw on the previous question was, it seems like this was the culprit, right? Seems like that was the problem. So here we are. We notice when we do our work with crayon, like a boss. Oh, wait, hang on, not yet. We do this to both sides. All right, we multiply both sides by that. We use our crayon to cancel it out. We've got this crazy stuff left. Over here, it's x plus 4 over 1. And over here, we got all this crazy stuff. All righty. What's the next step? Cross multiply. Here we go. So let's take this times that times that. Okay, so I'm going to do the x plus 4 times x plus 3. I'm going to write it this way. I've got to put in parentheses like that. And we're going to have to distribute, double distribute. Okay, on the right-hand side, that's just going to be itself because it's multiplied by 1. Let's skip over that step like I did earlier. On the left-hand side, we've got to use distributive property 2 times, right? So I've got to distribute there and there. And then again, right? Double distribute. So this will end up with x times x, which is, and then x times 4, 4x, and then 3 times x, which is, and then I add those together. What do I get? All right, let's go jam it all in here. We know what's going on. And 3 times 4, 12. Everything over here remains the same. Now, let's solve. We've got an x squared and an x. So instead of just getting all the variables on one side, numbers on the other, we have to get everything on one side and what number on the other side? 0. Awesome. Here we go. Let's do that. When I move this over here, what happens? Does it cancel? Careful. Remember, I'm doing the opposite. Oh, tricky, right? But our brain thinks that they cancel. If they were the same thing on both sides, then they go away. All right. So now subtract 3x from both sides. And you could send these either way. It really doesn't matter. But what I like to do is I like to keep my x squared positive. So if I'm you, helpful hint, keep your x squared positive. If we send it the other way, it'd say negative 2x squared. That'd be a problem, okay? Last thing, subtract 12. Now look at this. See ya. Disappears. Crayon. Boom. Do you see anything in common? I see that they have 2 in common, right? They have something else in common. X. Because the 2 numbers on the both sides of the equal sign were the same, we won't have to factor the same sort of way we did on the last question. All right, what's left over? Right, so I've got 1x left over here. When I divided by 2 here, I've got a 2 left. Are there any x's left here? No. Now, what does this mean? All right, so when we took out an x, it's like we made this its own factor. Remember what I said? Ignore this number out in front. Doesn't really mean much, but the x does. All right, so this tells us there's 2 possible answers. One of them is x equals negative 2. What does this tell us? X equals 0. So if x is ever a factor by itself, it means 0. Okay? Another way to think about what I just wrote here is this. So quick little sidebar. Isn't this the same thing as just saying X? Isn't it? Right. So a lot of people, when I write it out this way, X minus 0, they're like, oh, that answer is 0. Duh. All right. So we have two possible answers. Let's go back up to the top. These were the only things we identified, right? Okay. So that tells me that since neither of those are what we wrote at the beginning, then we have how many answers? 2, right? So if we go back to the assignment, you're going to see it's multiple choice like this. Crazy. Yeah. You can always do what once you have the answers? Plug them in and check it, right? You can always do that. I'm not going to do that this time. Okay. I'm going to let you work. Okay. If you have questions, let me know.